And we are live. What is up, Light Fam? Who is out in the crowd? We've got Glenn Lammons. Hello from Belgium. Wow, it always amazes me how far the stream reaches different parts of the world. Welcome, Glenn. Thank you for coming. Back to Dark Night of the Soul School. Yes, well, we've got a great classroom lesson for you today. Who else from the Light Fam is in the house? Rose, what's up, Rose? Greetings from London. Awesome. From across the pond. Thank you for stopping by. Are you going through the dark night of the soul, Rose? We got you covered today. So today's topic obviously is the dark night of the soul. We got a very special guest for you guys. And as I put in my post, make sure you've got all of your Dark Night of the Soul questions ready. We're going to be diving deep. Try to see who else is stopping by here. All right, well, we'll go ahead and jump right into the topic because when people watch this on the replay, if you don't start talking about the topic immediately, they click off. So today is a deep dive into the Dark Night of the Soul. Got a special guest for you today. Her name is Yasmin Elzomor. Now, she's going to be sharing her Dark Night of the Soul story with you guys to kind of inspire you guys that are going through the Dark Night of the Soul. I get a lot of comments from you guys that say you've been in the Dark Night of the Soul 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So we definitely don't want you there for that long. We want to give you some clarity on how to get out of it. And Yasmin is going to be sharing some of her tips and tricks on how she got out of it. She is a transformational and relationship coach. She's a public speaker. She's a podcast host. So you guys are in for a real treat today. We got Suzanne Clary in the house. Welcome, Suzanne. Stardust Diamond. All right, guys. Well, let me bring in our guest, Yasmin. Let's give her a warm, Lightways welcome.
Oh my God, David.
What is up? How are you?
I'm good. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
Right. It's all true.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for having me, David.
There we go. We're bigger.
Yes, there you go.
Say hello to the Light Fam.
Hi, Light Fam. How are you guys today?
Light Fam, give her a warm welcome. Give her some Lightways hospitality.
I'm super excited. I love these topics. And I was just thinking, I love technology so much for that reason, that we can get together and we can all kind of share our experiences and have it be this collective experience. You know, we don't have to go through
all across the world.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like as you're like, welcoming in the people that are joining the stream, I'm like, oh my God, like from all over, it's great.
Yep. Technology.
Yeah, totally.
So we'll go ahead and jump into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where people can find you, how you're empowering people, all that good stuff.
Oh my gosh, loaded question. Thank you, David, for that. Hi, everyone. I'm Yasmin. I am a relationship transformational coach, podcast host, speaker. I do a lot of different things. So when people ask me, what do you do? I'm like, I do a little bit of everything. Overall, I'm just someone else on the journey like you guys that is trying to make my way, that is trying to understand myself further and deeper, and trying to support and inspire others through my journey, because ultimately storytelling is really powerful. And I've learned that on my journey. Like when we can share our own stories and our own experiences, we can also inspire others that are going through similar things. So ultimately, that is my goal in life. That is my ultimate goal. And I've had 2 dark nights of the soul up until now. I'm counting. And my first one, which was my, of course, the catalyst to breaking open this experience, this shell that I was in, happened when I was 21. I was in a very dark place. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I was still trying to figure things out. I mean, I was 21. I wanted to go out with my friends and have a good time and enjoy myself. But the universe had different things in store for me.
Doesn't it always?
Always, right? Like we think we have it planned out, and then we're like, never mind,
Right.
actually. And I was in a relationship at the time that was not healthy for me. But of course, when you're in a very unconscious and unaware state, you're trying to make things work. You're trying to force things to happen, but you don't realize it until you start, healing. And I was working 3 9 to 5 jobs, burning myself out, like working for jobs that did not fit and suit who I was and who I am. And I was just living very unconsciously, not taking care of myself, like projecting myself onto people constantly. And I was a very different person. And I remember the night that I had my dark night, that I like spiraled into it. It started with a panic attack. And I'm not sure if anyone else can relate to this, but for me, it started with a panic attack. And it was like my first panic attack ever. I had never had a panic attack prior to that. And I remember feeling like tunnel vision. I remember feeling like this sensation of doom. I was feeling like numb, my legs, my arms, everything was like, I felt like it was an out of body panic attack. And I was like, there's something here that is happening. And I wasn't really understanding it, but I knew that something major was gonna was gonna change in my life. Like on a very deep soul level, I knew. But of course, the ego likes to think, am I sick? Is there something wrong physically? You know what I mean? Like, what's really going on here? So I went to doctors, I got checked out. The doctors told me that you have adrenal fatigue, you're very stressed out. Of course, I had a lot of anxiety and depression at the time, wasn't taking care of myself whatsoever. So I started physically working on myself, going to the gym, working on my physical body, making sure I was eating healthier, and surrounding myself with the right things, the right people, the right community, and as I started doing that, and as I started to really heal, really focus on myself in that way and prioritize myself and my well-being, I began realizing that the things and the people in my life were not serving me. So my relationship started to fall apart, and it started to become very obvious and very clear that this isn't the person that I'm supposed to be with. And as I started to grow, of course, you start to see what's meant to be in your life and what's not meant to be in your life, because as you raise your frequency and your vibration, other things start falling away, and you're like, oh my God, this is painful, because
You get a higher vantage point.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And all of it is, of course, as it's exciting. It's exciting, but in the moment you're grieving because you're losing parts of yourself. And as you grow and you evolve, those things that are not meant to be in your life, they're going to go, and it's like, no matter how much you want to hold on, they're going to go. And I've learned that on this journey. And I realized, like, once me and my ex broke up, that was my catalyst to helping other people in their romantic relationships, because romance and love has been a theme in my life, a constant theme that I've had to work through, that it hasn't come so easily to me, and I've always looked at other people, and I would think to myself, why is it that relationships are so difficult for me? Like, there's some lesson here, that I'm not catching, that I'm not learning, that makes it feel like there's like a wall, between me and my romantic partners. And I realized it's because I wasn't doing the shadow work. A lot of the stuff that I was placing the blame on them, saying it was their fault, like constantly pointing fingers. But what about me? What about my stuff? What about the things that I was doing wrong? Because a relationship is always two people. And, that's when I started to really like learn and think to myself, people need to be more aware, because you can't heal relationships if you don't heal yourself. It starts with you. Every relationship starts with you.
From the rooftops, Yasmin. Can I get an amen?
Thank you. But it's true, right? We're blaming, we're bypassing. You and I have talked about that on my podcast last time we did the episode. People are constantly bypassing, but we're like, what about me? What about what I'm bringing to the table? How can I take responsibility for the things that I'm doing? Because it's always a two-way street. And that's when I started to really work on myself and really like look at my own stuff. While it was difficult, I noticed that as soon as I started doing the shadow work and all the inner work, I began moving out of my dark night. That's when I started to feel a shift. I was like, oh, I'm not, deeply depressed anymore. Like, I'm actually moving out of it. And when you're in it, of course, you're in victim mentality. You're like, oh, woe is me. why is this happening to me? Like the universe hates me, everyone's against me. And I remember being in that state, you know, of victim mentality. And then as I got out, I'm like, oh my God, like all I had to do was really start looking at my own stuff and putting the pieces together, you know? And that's when, you know, I started coaching. That's when I started like stepping into my power fully of what I wanted to do, focusing in on what's really important to me in this lifetime. What is my mission? What did I come here to accomplish? And how can I do it with love and integrity? You know, ultimately that's the highest frequency, right? Love and integrity. It's like, how can I help others? And how can I also continue to help myself through that, through those emotions, you know? And yeah, from that point, you know, I started to grow. I started to do all these things. And then I had my second dark night last year.
Fun times.
round two, you
Right.
guys. And you know, the first time I remember when I got out of it, I was like, you know, your ego starts to feel like, oh yeah, I'm done with the dark night. I don't have to go through that again. And we think we're done. We think we're done on the healing journey. And then something else comes and slaps you, and you're like, never mind. Take that back.
Totally.
And so last year, the second time around, like I felt that way. I was like, I was humbled, you know, because a part of me felt like I was in victim mentality of like, why is this happening to me again? I've done all the work. I've gotten to a point where I'm working on myself. I'm looking at my own stuff. Like, why am I going through it? And it made me humble, and it made me realize that, you know, we're always changing, and we're always growing, and we're always evolving. And a dark night of the soul is not just a one-time thing. You know, I wish it was just an actual dark night and then a sunny morning. You know, I really wish that was the case. But the truth is, you're going to ebb and flow, and you're going to go in and you're going to get out of it. You're going to go in again. And it's not about never having a dark night again. It's about learning how to move through it and having the tools available to you so you can help yourself move through it. So you can help yourself feel more grounded in moments where you feel like you don't have that structure, you know, in moments where you feel like you are dissolving, like you literally do feel like you're dying.
Right.
So that's, yeah, it legit feels like that. So I realized, and it humbled me, and I realized, you know, I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly evolving. The goal isn't to heal and never look back at this again. You know, there is no goal in healing, right? That's also the ego. It's a trick of the ego too, of like, I'm done. I don't have to do anything ever again. It's like, no, even with past triggers, even with past wounds, they might come up again, you know, like even when you think you got it figured out, you're like, oh, it's back.
The journey is the destination, I always like to say.
Yes, exactly, David. Yes, destination. It's like we're always trying to hit that destination point, but there is no destination in the healing journey. You know, that's why it's so scary. That's why it's so unknown, because the ego doesn't understand that. You know, it's like there's no point A to point B. It's just a wide open road, and you're kind of like going through the maze, you know, and that's how it's always felt like for me. So, you know, I think obviously this dark night, although it was difficult, I felt safer knowing that I've gone through it before and I can get through it again. You know, and I think once you understand the death and rebirth cycles of life, it does become easier. It does become easier to go through it. That doesn't mean that in the moment, you know, you're gonna know what to do and you're gonna feel a-okay. Like, of course, you have to allow yourself to feel all the emotions, but it does mean that you will get to a point where this is just part of the cycle. It's part of life. You know, it's part of the cycle of life. And I think that's where your power lies, when you start to realize that, and when you start to feel confident enough to know that you can make it through. 1000% you can. 1000% you can. It doesn't feel that way, and you probably won't listen to anyone who's been on the journey, because I know I've been there watching people's videos, and they're all like, I made it out of the dark night. And I'm like, oh, whatever. You know, it's like I'm in it right now, and I feel like I'm dying. But you do make it out, and you make it out stronger and more resilient and more powerful. And ultimately, that is the goal, you know? So yeah, that's a little bit of my story.
I love it. So the second dark night was a little bit easier than the first one.
Yes. The second one was a little bit easier. I also found that it was a bit shorter for me, I guess, because I had already known, like, okay, I felt this before. It started the same way. The second one started the same way the first one did. It was like a deja vu kind of thing. I'm like, oh my God, I've been here before. This is bizarre. This is like really strange. But I knew it. I knew it as I was like going through it last year. I knew that this is something similar to what I had gone through, you know, and this time it was just like affirming to me, you know, this is, you got this. You know the steps, you know the cycle. Feel your way through it. And that is the ultimate lesson that I've learned on the Dark Night, is to feel, you know, because this is something I've always disconnected myself from, my emotions. And that's that's my feminine power, you know, and like I've been so disconnected from that like all my life. And of course, this stems from childhood and probably previous lifetimes as well, if we want to go that far. But all my life, I always felt like I'd be judged for showing my emotions, for feeling things, because I am very sensitive. I have a very sensitive heart, and not allowing myself to feel, I would feel like, oh, I'm strong, I'm powerful if I don't show emotion, because we all also live in a society that tells us that, you know.
This is
So
definitely expected of men as well.
oh my gosh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. It disconnects us all as humans. Forget the masculine, feminine. It just completely disconnects us all as humans. We need to feel. That's our power, you know. It's our emotions are our power. It's what helps us feel, make decisions, discern, also comes from emotion, you know. So for me, it's like I've always felt like I couldn't feel my emotions. And what I would do when I would go through a breakup, or when I would experience a death in the family, or something difficult would happen to me, I would analyze. I would go into like my analytical brain. I would analyze, why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't be feeling this way, or I should be feeling this way. You know, I would judge myself.
Ego.
And I would completely like disconnect, go on Instagram, eat food, go out, you know, like stimulation, like distract myself through all the things that I could distract myself through. So I wouldn't feel, I would numb myself. And they would catch up with me, because eventually the body keeps the score, you know, and eventually your body
I
will
like that one. The body keeps the score. Wow.
Yeah, that's the name of a book, actually. It's great. It's amazing. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. I forgot who the author is, but great book, amazing book. And I read that a few years ago. And it's true. Your body keeps the score. It lets you know what's wrong, you know, and it lets you know what you're hiding and what you're not looking at, you know. So the ego's very tricky. It thinks it can get away with it. And then your body's like, no, we're feeling this. This is happening.
Yeah. Energy hates to be trapped.
Oh, yeah.
So when
Absolutely.
it's trapped in the body, it tends to manifest in ways that we don't want it to.
Yes.
You can only suppress it so long.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can only suppress it so long. So eventually it will come out, and eventually you do have to feel it. So that's something I've learned. And now I'm in a place where I am feeling, I'm tapping into that feminine power of mine, of feeling emotion. And not only does it feel healthier, it feels empowering. It feels, you know, I feel sexier. I feel more feminine. I feel more magnetic. I feel more radiant. And ultimately, that's where, you know, again, a woman's power comes from, a human's power, you know, in general, but specifically speaking as a woman, you know, it's so much more helpful to tap in and to feel whatever needs to come up, you know, and it's great. And that's what healing is about.
And the way that you're doing it, so you don't have trapped energy. It's hard to be magnetic when you have trapped energy.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned something earlier that is something that I say in a lot of my videos. Would you agree? So the path that you're on right now, where you're empowering people, you're a relationship coach, and you kind of stumbled upon that as you're coming out of the dark night of the soul, realizing that that's your purpose.
Yeah.
So would you agree that your life purpose is in vibrational resonance with your healed trauma?
Yes, I would agree. Yeah, I definitely would agree. I feel like, you know, in general, the things that we go through, of course, you know, it's difficult, and we might want to, it's easy to stay in victim mentality and victimhood. But ultimately, these things, if you know how to transmute it and you know how to alchemize it, that's the key, takes you to a further place, you know, and helps you tap into your power. So rather than seeing it as like, this is happening to me, see it as this is happening for me.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yep.
it's helping. And it does. And I could speak from personal experience. That's not bypassing. That's literally just saying, this is my mindset shift. And it's like, I was in victimhood for many, many years. I was in victimhood. I was very negative. I was very pessimistic. I was very different. I was a very repelling person. I wasn't very pleasant to be around, because I was constantly like, this is happening to me. Oh my God, everyone hates me, this and that. And, once you shift that, and you change the way you think about things, you learn to alchemize, you learn to transmute these emotions. And that's what helps you on your path, on your mission.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here for. You know what I mean? Like, we got to make the best of it.
Why we decided to incarnate.
We got to make the best of it. Like, as difficult as it can be. And we could see the darkness in what's playing out on the planet right now, of course, because there is, duality. There's bad stuff that's happening. But we also need to learn how to use that to our advantage. You know what I mean? How can we surpass that? How can we be better? How can we bring better things to this planet while we're alive? How can we leave our legacy?
Alchemy.
Yes, alchemy. Exactly.
Yep.
That's the answer. Yeah.
So absolutely. I have some little questions for you here.
Yes.
I think you kind of described this one. So I was going to say, describe the old identity that died during the dark night of the soul.
That's a
touched on that a little bit.
That's a good one. The old identity. I would say the victim identity died for sure. That one died because I no longer see myself as a victim. Even in moments where I want to be a victim, it's almost like I know too much that I can't.
You can't unknow what you know.
And it's like, I'm so far to this dang journey that I cannot like undo this, whereas before, like I've said before, I was stuck in that place, and my old identity was also, everything for me was based on external validation. I would get a high anytime I got externally validated, and when that high died out, I would feel upset, or I would feel depressed, or I would feel low. And I would immediately feel the difference, and I'd be like, why do I feel this way? Like, I've accomplished this and this and this and this. I should be feeling happy. But I wasn't, because it was all ego-based, completely just ego-based, like there was no soul behind that. Whereas now I feel like I have a better balance. Of course, the ego is necessary. We need it, like it transforms. It doesn't just die and never come back. Like the ego just, it dies temporarily, and then it's like, I'm back. Right. And I'm better.
It metamorphosizes.
Yes, exactly. So we need to learn how to use both the soul and the ego, have them work together rather than against each other. And I always say the ego's like a puppy dog. You got to learn how to train it. Right.
Don't let him in the driver's seat.
Exactly. Don't let him in the driver's seat. He could be next to you, but let the soul be the one that drives you. And now I feel like with validation from people, whenever I accomplish something or something goes great in my life and I share it with others, I no longer feel the need to share it to gain attention from it or to get something from it. Now I share with purpose, with intention. Like everything I do now is so much more intentional than what I did before the dark night. And I've noticed that shift. And I've had people notice that too. Like family and friends have noticed, like, there's something different about you. I don't know what it is. It's just the way you show up is different. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it means to alchemize,
Well, that's a good segue into who is segment Yasmin 2.0.
Oh my God. Yasmin 2.0. I love that. I would say Yasmin 2.0 is a woman who is just more sure of herself and more confident in what she came here to do, and someone who knows her worth and her power and isn't just going to give that away to anyone, and I have stronger boundaries now. I'm able to discern better now. That's another thing that happens when you go through a dark night, discernment. Your discernment definitely strengthens because you now know, you see your own stuff. It's out there, for you to see. It's like, oh, now I see my own shadows and I see what I need to let go of. And again, you can't undo that.
Right.
And also it helps you discern because now you're able to see other people's stuff a lot clearer.
Yep. Yep.
Which can be difficult sometimes because there can be a lot of projection going on there. But as long as you know yourself and you know who you are and you have a stable structure of who you are and your identity, that's all that matters. What
Right.
they do or don't do doesn't matter. It's just you know who you are, you know your shadows, you know your baggage, and that's it. And it's like, and you know your boundaries too. It's like if that person's not right for you, you know that you can leave at any point.
Because you become self-validating, self-approving. You don't need
Yes,
someone else to complete you.
exactly.
Once you get this inner sense of wholeness, people can come and go, and it doesn't affect your sense of wholeness or completeness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, David. Perfectly said. Exactly. Absolutely.
So here's an interesting question that I get all of the time. So I
Yeah.
want to get your advice for people that have been stuck in the dark night of the soul forever, forever, forever.
Oh my gosh, that's a long time.
Yeah.
I've had mine have been 3 years. Last year was like, yeah, I would say 1 year. So I haven't been stuck that long. But what I will say is I think that when we are moving through a dark night and we are unaware of what we're going through, and we're not really conscious of what's going on. And of course, if we're not doing the inner work, we're not doing the shadow work, then it might feel like it's going on longer, or you might actually be in that for a longer time period. But I think the more aware you become and the more work you do on yourself and the more action you take, I think that's what matters. I remember, what was it? I think I had a client and it was at the end of last year. And she told me, Yasmin, I feel like I'm aware that I'm going through a dark night and I know what I'm going through. And I know that this is a dark night and I'm trying to do the inner work, but for some reason I feel like I'm not moving out of it. So I told her, I'm like, okay, well, what does your inner work consist of? So she's like, I'm journaling, I'm meditating, I'm like, doing like shadow work prompts that I'm finding online. I was like, okay, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm glad that that's part of your work that you're doing. But what actions are you taking? And I was like, what do you need to change in your life? And then that's when she was like, that's a good point. And she realized, she's like, well, I don't really have healthy friendships right now. Like a lot of friendships I feel are outdated. I feel like I'm not moving in my dating life. Like I'm not finding anyone, I'm struggling finding a man. And I don't like the job I'm in and stuff. I'm like, okay, so you see that stuff right there needs to change. It's stagnation. You're stuck in a stagnant place, meaning that you need to take the action to get out of it. It's like, it's one thing being aware and doing the work emotionally, like journaling and meditating and all that stuff, but it's another thing to actually take the action and do something differently. And I think that's where the key is. What do you need to do differently? And that's the part where most people don't want to look at, because if they have to break up with their partner or they have to leave certain friendships or they have to leave a job that they know is not good for them, it's harder to take the action. It's harder to take that level of personal responsibility. So, I always say that. And like, I look at myself through that too. And I'm like, what do I need to change right now? Like, why do I feel stuck?
Yeah. Kind of piggybacking on that, what I always say is, what is it that you need to let go of that you think is a threat to survival?
Wow.
That's what'll get you through the dark night of the soul. So there's something that's not serving.
Yeah.
But your ego believes it's a threat to survival if you let it go. And
Yeah.
this is the people that are stuck 20 years. They won't let that job they hate or that toxic relationship or that addiction or whatever it is go.
Yes.
And
exactly.
that keeps the old identity anchored into the current timeline.
1000%. 1000%. Yeah. It's like you're not allowing yourself to transform. It's like you need to allow the transformation to happen too, through surrendering, but also through action.
Right.
And surrender is action, in my opinion. When we're surrendering, we are taking an action. It's not passive, like whatever, let life do whatever it wants to do to me. Surrendering is more, I will do what I need to do, and then I'll step back and see how it unfolds. It's like, if you need to break up with someone, take the action, do it, and then step back and see how you feel and what unfolds from there. But it really
Show
is
yourself that you didn't die. This is the thing, once you show yourself that you didn't die, you're okay,
Yes.
you're still alive. There's a
Yes.
new inner sense of resilience and
Yes.
breakableness, if
It's
that's a word.
unbreakableness. Oh my God, totally, totally.
Yeah,
And it comes from a very humble place because you've been humbled on the dark night.
right.
It's like you've been slapped a little bit here and there. So yeah, for sure. It feels new, you feel regenerated, you feel brand new, and you feel like you can take on the world in a healthier and more grounded way.
The new identity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you
Absolutely.
said something at the very beginning, as far as people that have been stuck in it for a long time that they may not be aware. So, what are some of the signs and symptoms of the dark night of the soul?
That's a really good question. So with my experience, I have felt, of course, anxiety, right? Panic attacks could be a thing. Like the physical body is like going through a change as well, because everything, mind, body, spirit is connected, as we know. So everything kind of aligns in that sense. Depression, right? It's a spiritual type of depression. It's not like a regular depression. It's a spiritual depression that you're just kind of feeling like something needs to change. It's this inner knowing that something needs to change. I experienced suicidal ideation,
Mm,
so that's another thing also as well. I feel that a lot of people I've talked to that have gone through a dark night also have experienced suicidal ideation. And the research I've done on that too, through other people and through myself now, is when we experience that, it's because the ego feels there's no point because it's dissolving, right? It's deteriorating in that moment. So it feels like, what's the point? There's no point in living because I no longer have an identity in this moment.
right.
But that's just the ego speaking. So you need to learn how to reel that back, and obviously not be impulsive, and learn to manage the emotions and the thoughts that come up. Get a support system that could be there for you in those difficult moments that you feel like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I can't continue on this journey anymore. Find ways and tools to help you relax, find ways to help you manage those difficult emotions that might come up. I've noticed that was the case for me. Also, maybe dissociation. That's another thing that can happen that I also noticed. Like sometimes I felt very dissociated and very disconnected from my body. I'm like, what's going on? I think when you're going through a dark night, things happen so quickly on an unconscious level that you're not even aware of how much trauma you're probably healing and how much is coming up in those moments. And your body dissociates to protect yourself. That's why dissociation happens. It's trying to protect you to not feel overwhelmed or so much at the same time.
Right.
But just know that, again, as long as you take it step by step, day by day, you can make it through. Have the right people in your life. Exercising helps a lot as well, and eating well, making sure your body is in good shape during those times, because that's our vessel, right? It's our home. It helps us in moments where we're going through grief, and even when we're not going through the dark night, right? Like we should always be taking care of our bodies, and loving our bodies. But yeah, I think those are like the main things that I have felt on the journey, like the big ones. And of course, losing people, realizing that you no longer align with other people. You start to feel that too. It starts to become more apparent. So yeah.
As those people drop away, you make space for your vibe tribe. This is what I always
Yes.
tell people. People get upset that, people that no longer resonate are leaving their life. And I'm like, you have room now for people that do resonate.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
you
Exactly.
just made space.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and you don't have to drift away from people with hate, or dislike. Like you can just drift away and realize like this is no longer a match. It could be later on down the line, you don't know, but right now it just isn't. And I think if we saw that, and we saw breakups like that as well, it would help so much, because we would be able to extend more compassion.
And you wouldn't be holding resentment, which is trapped energy. So if you
Absolutely.
send people away with love, you guys, Light fam, you guys know I love Ho'oponopono. Just send them away with Ho'oponopono, send them away with love. And then you're not holding resentment, which is trapped energy.
Yeah, yeah, and you're
Right.
not bringing that to the next person,
Exactly.
because that's what ends up happening is we end things, and I know we've all been there at one point or another. I've been there. We end things with a specific partner. We end things with hate, resentment, and we hold on to that, and we think like, oh, whatever, I don't care anymore. But it's still there. Again, it's trapped in the body if it hasn't been dealt with. And then you bring that to the next person.
Yep. You sure do.
All the baggage.
This is why we like to do healing exercises.
This is why we like to do shadow work.
Exactly. Now, here's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
If you could do it all over again, would you go through the dark night of the soul again? And if so, how would you go through it differently?
Oh my gosh, that's such a difficult question. Because part of me wants to say, no, absolutely not. That is absolute hell. I would never go through it again. But then the other part of me knows the rewards that comes with it. So there's the gold, that we can get when we confront the dragon. We get the gold. So to me, that's how I see it. And I'm like, it's exciting when I go through these moments because I know what's waiting for me at the end of the tunnel. So now I know because I've been through it and I've gotten accustomed to it that I'm like, I know that going through this is going to help me, step into my power further, understand myself more, love myself more. Again, it all depends on how you do it. Everything's intentional, right? So it really depends on you and what you alchemize and what you transmute. But I would go through it and I would come out stronger. And I know I have faith that I would be able to make it through, because again, I've experienced it before and I know what to expect. And
if you hadn't gone through it, you might not be a coach. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
If
I can't, yeah. And I always say this, like, if you can't go through certain things or experiences, you can't really teach other people. You can teach intellectually, but there's no better feeling than teaching from a place of wisdom.
1,000%.
There's something about that. And I've learned that as I've gotten older, when I was like 21, 22, I remember I'm someone who loves to learn. I'm very intellectual. I like learning new concepts and different things. And I love connecting with different people, reading a lot of books. So intellectually, I knew a lot of things, but I was missing the emotional aspect. And there's something so different about going through something emotionally and then feeling that passion for what you're teaching. There's no better feeling because people feel that.
That's where the passion comes from because you've been through it. You can't get the passion from reading.
No, you can't. The
passion comes from the life experience, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, David. It comes from your wisdom. It comes from what you've gone through. It comes from experiencing different things. And, it's the best feeling because people feel that and they'll trust you. They're like, oh, she knows what she's talking about, and it's like if you're coaching or you're getting into healing work, it's important that you know what you're doing. You want to be able to also lead people with integrity. You want to lead people through a place of love and security, right? And confidence that I know what I'm doing. And if I'm charging money, I better know what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I'm making money off of someone, I better have integrity. I better lead with love and integrity. So yeah, that's how I see it. I think it's passion is everything and wisdom is everything, and a mix of that and intellect. Of course, intellect is important too, but just having the two makes things so much better. And yeah, you exude a certain magnetism and energy when you're in that place.
1,000%.
Yeah.
So if you did have to go through it again, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? That's a really good question. I feel like this time around, the second Dark Night, I did things a little better than the first time, of course, because I knew things a little bit more. I knew what was coming. I knew what to expect. I'd probably allow myself to feel even more. I would really tap into my emotions more. I think that's something that I still struggle with. And I still to this day, I'm like, it's a daily thing, it's a daily challenge to feel and tap in and allow myself to feel emotions without feeling like they're going to control me. I think that's my biggest fear with emotion. So I would probably if I had to go through it again, I would probably, learn to feel into things more, learn to allow myself to feel the grief, fully.
So negative emotions are okay?
No, you shouldn't feel that stuff. It's terrible.
I always have to jump on this because I see these other channels that try to do this forced positivity thing. And it's all of your learning is in the negative emotions. The negative emotions tell you where you're in alignment with fear and out of alignment with love. That's the only way you're going to grow.
Oh my God.
But
Exactly, David. That is my biggest pet peeve. I know we've talked about that before so many times. It is my biggest pet peeve. It's like, oh, people are like, oh, it's not good to feel anger. It's not good to feel sadness. It's like, but when you feel anger serves a purpose, right? Like anger serves a purpose. Anger is motivation if you know how to channel it. It again comes down to how you use it, how you channel it. Right? Righteous anger is fine. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you know how you're, transmuting it. Same with sadness, same with envy, jealousy. These are all human emotions. Like we all experience it, right?
yeah,
Like anyone who says I've never felt jealous or envious, like crock of shit. I don't believe
right.
it.
We'll have to edit that out, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Right? It's like we've all experienced it. We've all been there. That's the human experience, right? That's what we're all here to do, is to tap into emotions, to feel, learning how to transmute, and learning how to make that, help us make us more powerful. Ultimately that's the goal. And, if we're stuffing down these emotions and we're like, oh, we can't feel negative emotions, we can't feel more dense emotions, then, you're not going to get far, right? You're not going to get far. These are the things that teach us and help us.
Yeah, it's kind of not. It's kind of like not looking at your compass. Like if you're trying to get somewhere, and the feedback of the barometer that you're getting is anger or jealousy or whatever it is, but you're ignoring that.
Yeah.
You think you're heading in the right direction, but you're not looking at the compass of where you're actually in alignment to go.
That's a great way to put it.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, light fam, no toxic positivity out there. All emotions are valid.
No toxic positivity
They
allowed.
come with a message. What I always like to say is invite your negative emotions in like a house guest. Get them some whatever, milk and cookies,
Yeah.
and say, "What are you here to teach me?" Right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. What are you here to teach me? Absolutely.
Let's see here. Ooh, you want to get a little esoteric?
Yeah, I
Yasmin?
do. Let's do
Okay,
it.
let's get
I'm ready.
esoteric here. Do you believe that we choose before incarnation when we will go through the dark night of the soul? And if so, why?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a
We don't
good
mess
one.
around here at Lightways. We got the tough questions.
That's a good one. That's a
We
good one.
dig deep.
I love it. No, I love it. This is great. I love things that, challenge me and help me think further. I would say yeah, we do. I think we do. I think our souls know when it's time to heal something. Our souls know when it's time to like end a contract with someone that we, maybe we're in a relationship with, or a job, or a friendship. I do believe that we do know when we're going to go through it. We do know when we're going to go through some sort of soul learning, some sort of experience that's going to help us, move on to the next level of our life. Yeah, I think that, a lot of people say, oh, again, it's the victim mentality of like, why is this happening to me? Like, I didn't choose this. I didn't pick this. And there is like a lot of controversy around that, because some people do believe that, no, I don't think I picked this. I don't think I chose this.
That's what
But
the ego says.
huh?
That's what the ego says.
That's a thing.
The ego says, "Why in the world would I choose this?" Because the ego was around before incarnation.
Of
The
course,
ego didn't get the memo, right?
the ego's not happy this is happening. Of course not. He's deteriorating. He's dissolving. Yeah, so it's interesting. It's a really interesting concept to like dive into and think about. I think that, we definitely do know when big events like this are going to happen to us. We do feel on an intuitive level like something's going to happen, because I do remember before last year, I felt something was going to happen. I didn't know what it was, but like emotionally, probably like a couple months before, I was already having like little hints that I was going to go into some sort of transformation. And again, I don't know how to physically, how to like actually logically explain that, but it
Your
was like this
intuition.
inner knowing. Yeah, intuition, inner knowing that like something's going to happen. I don't know what it is. I'm going to go through changes. Like a lot of things are going to like change for me in the next few years. And I still feel that. I still feel like I'm still in a transformation, I'm just out of the darkest point of my life, but I am definitely still growing, healing, evolving, integrating. I'm definitely in the integration phase. Because I feel more grounded and more excited of where I'm heading. But yeah, I think that ultimately we do intuitively feel things. We do. It's kind of like when we're going to break up with someone. intuitively we know, when we know like this relationship's not going in the right direction, something's off here. Although the ego likes to lie and say, no, what are you talking about? Everything's good, everything's fine. And eventually you do end up breaking up. And you're like, oh, I knew this was going to happen. Everyone always
Right.
says that, right? It's
Hindsight.
it's intuitive. It's intuitive. It's all based on intuition. We are highly, highly powerful intuitive beings, right? And we don't know the amount of power that we have because it's been hidden from us,
We haven't been programmed to know, but that's a
Absolutely.
difference.
That's
That's
a
a different
different
video.
That is a completely different story. But yeah, exactly. Exactly. Absolutely.
So if we do choose our dark night, why do we choose it?
I think we choose it to, again, help us feel emotion and also help us on our journey, help us to heal what we need to heal in order to help others. Like that's my opinion on that. I think, we're here to help other people through our stories, through our experiences, through what we've gone through. And if we don't go through these things, if we don't go through these dark nights or these transformations, how are we going to help other people?
Right.
We can't. There's only so much we can do. But if we go through these transformations and we allow ourselves to go through these dark nights, then we can absolutely feel more with others. I think one thing I wanted to add that just reminded me is before my dark night, it's almost like I didn't really have much compassion for other people's situations and trauma. Like I would, of course, I would care when my friends told me something like traumatic that would happen to them, but I didn't really understand it emotionally. You know what I mean? I would bypass. I would be the bypasser. I would be the one that'd be like, oh, just think positively about it. You're all good. It's fine.
Right.
I was that person. I admit it. And now I'm like, oh my God, there's so much more to that. Now I've learned through feeling everything I felt in the last year and the first dark night as well. Now I know when other people go through traumatic situations or are feeling similar emotions to what I felt, I can be like, I get you. I know what you mean.
It gives you empathy and compassion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Fear is also the barrier to expression. And
yeah.
so unhealed trauma is in alignment with fear. So when you start to heal that trauma, you begin to fearlessly express, and then you want to help other people and guide other people.
Yeah, because you're filling your own cup, so now you want to help fill other people's cups. And that's, again, what we came here to do.
Absolutely. What is your biggest epiphany after going through the dark night of the soul?
My biggest epiphany is just how it's so crazy how when we go through these things and these like hardships in life, how powerful and how resilient the human soul truly is. Like it makes me realize, it makes me grateful and thankful of like, we go through a lot. Humans endure a lot, and some more than others, you know what I mean? And some of us came with a lot of stuff here in this lifetime, unfortunately, but we endure regardless. We all endure a lot. We all go through so much and we all feel so much, and our experiences are not that different. If we really talk to people and we connect with others on a deep level, we realize at the core of it, we all want to be loved. We all want to be cared for. We all want to be heard, and we all want to be validated.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned coming out of my dark night. It's like, we're all insanely powerful. We've been, again, like you said, David, we've been programmed to not really step into our power, to stay small and be there and be quiet and don't say anything. Don't tap into your intuition. Just shut up and listen, right? Don't discern, like all these things that we've been taught. And, when you go through a dark night, you realize just really, truly how powerful the human soul is and how we all experience similar things and how we're all on the journey together, and we're all fighting with each other and hating on each other. It's like, listen, we all want the same thing. We all want love and we all want to be seen. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We all desire very similar things, and it plays out differently for everyone because, of course, we're all unique and we have distinct personalities. But at the end of it all, we really all are all connected. And if we realize that, truly felt that, if we all go through a dark night and we like get out of it stronger and more powerful, that's really how the world changes. It's like we can't point fingers. We got to do the inner work first.
So it sounds like getting through the dark night of the soul helps you step into unity consciousness.
Yes.
Better.
It's like people want to change the world. Everyone wants unity. Everyone wants this, like, especially right now with all the things that are happening in the world. We all want to be connected. There's so much hate and so much like back and forth. But again, it's a lot of it is projection, right? A lot of it is like not looking at our own wounds and pointing
the
the
universe
finger.
Is your mirror.
Yeah, pointing the finger, and it's like I clearly see people's wounds. I clearly see my own, So yeah, it really comes down to that. If we want peace and we want more love on the planet, we have to be willing to go through these difficult hardships. We have to be willing to do the work. And the work is not sitting there and, meditating in lotus position. The work is looking at your ugly parts. It's like, yeah, shadow work, challenging yourself, to take action, to be more bold, to step into your power, step into your confidence, which is, again, it's a daily practice. It's not, I did it once and I don't have to do it again. It's constant and it doesn't matter. It's like an ongoing journey.
Yeah, and they can be baby steps. So
Yes.
if you have an idea of what your greatest version is, which might be opposite of where you are right now, you can take baby steps in that direction.
For sure.
And those baby steps turn into momentum. And then that new identity is not something off into someday. It's something that you've now integrated into your current timeline. And next thing you know, you're Yasmin 2.0 or whoever, right?
Yasmin 2.0. I love that. That was good. That was really good. I'm like, oh, I'm going to use that now.
Well, before we hand it over to the people for their questions, is there any one last major, huge piece of advice that you would give people going through the dark night of the soul?
I would say don't disregard your negative emotions. That is like my biggest piece of advice. And I will forever say that is stop bypassing. Don't bypass what needs to be felt. Let it come up. Let yourself feel. And remember that there is gold in these emotions. There is gold in the anger, the sadness, the jealousy, the rage, whatever it is that you're feeling. There is gold and you'll find it, but you need to feel it. That's how
you go into the darkness, right?
Yes, you must go into the tunnel. You must go, and just remember that you're strong enough to get out of it as well.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All of our the hidden knowledge is hidden in the darkness. The darkness is where you're going to find your greatest version.
All the hidden knowledge, yeah, exactly. The underworld. Dive into the underworld. Don't be afraid.
The religious people are going to lose their minds right now.
Oh my God, I
know. Anyway.
Like hell? We're going to hell? No.
Let me see here. Do we have questions from the Light Fam? I see a lot of stuff here. Oh, Glenn Lemons. Let me see here. What does Glenn say? Does our dark nights also have to do with our past lives? Interesting question, Glenn.
That's a great question, Glenn. That's amazing. I've been, it's interesting. I love that this question's coming up because I've been thinking about that lately. This is something I've been like kind of thinking about and pondering on. I'm like really questioning that. Like, is it past life? And I do think so. I do think we've been here plenty of lifetimes, plenty. We've been reincarnating and reincarnating on this loop, right? And we for sure have felt trauma from previous lifetimes that sometimes the things that you might go through in this lifetime, like the feelings that you might have, might not make sense. It's like, for example, I'll give you an example. I remember I did an astrology reading with like a Vedic astrologer, right? And he told me, based off of your Vedic chart, which is very different from the Western model, the tropical model, it's more predictive and you could see more. It's more in depth. And he told me, you have had many lifetimes. You're a very old soul, but you are carrying a lot from your past lives, and you're actually healing it now. So the amount of healing that you're doing now, and the dark nights that you have, are very intense for what your life portrays, because I haven't had any crazy amount of trauma, in terms of like what I've gone through. So when people ask me like, oh my God, have you had like a really intense childhood? And it's like, no, I actually had a pretty good childhood, right? Like, yes, I was like disregarded emotionally in many ways, but overall I had a home, I had, a family that cared for me, all these things. I had the basic foundation set, so I'm like, no, to the level of emotion that I feel with these dark nights, it does feel like there's a disconnect. And the astrologer was like, yeah, it makes sense because you are healing it. This is all stuff from past lives and ancestral as well. A lot of it is ancestral. We are healing also and breaking ancestral patterns from family members, that have gone through depression or anxiety, wars, you know what I mean? Racism, all these things that we also feel. And because it's all in our DNA, right? It's passed on and passed on, because if no one heals it, it keeps getting passed on. So we
Right.
got to be the ones to heal it. So yes, Glenn, to answer your question, I do believe it's a lot of past life stuff.
Susan says, am I going to bring it on by fearing it coming?
This is a good one. I don't like, again, when you feel fear, I think it's important that you feel it, don't think immediately like, oh, I'm going to manifest it or attract it, like I do think that that's on some level, if we say that, we're also bypassing, it's like, oh, don't fear something. And like, it won't happen if I don't fear it. It's like, if it's meant to happen to you, it's going to happen whether you fear it or not, so that's how I see it. It's like, just know that when it happens, and if it does come on and you do experience a dark night, you'll be okay. You will get through it. You will manage your way through it. So I don't think you should be afraid. I think that if there's fear coming up, that's okay. Tap into the fear, and transmute that fear. How can you prepare for it, right? Use the fear to help you prepare for a dark night. If I were to go through it, what would I do? How would I manage it? How can I have the tools ready in case I were to go through something? Like have that warrior mindset, as I like to call it.
Or what would the bigger picture for my life be if I were to go through it?
Absolutely.
See, this is why I like to, when people talk about fear typically comes with some type of a message, and we can either debunk the message and invalidate it if it's just the ego fear mongering, which is a lot of time what's going on.
Right.
Or we can validate if it's an actual threat to survival. But when we start to debunk the fear, like in Susan's case, we can say, okay, well, why would I fear the dark night of the soul if it's for my highest good and it's to get me on my life purpose and to get my greatest version to come out? Why would I fear that?
Totally. Right? Totally. Exactly. Yeah.
And then the next question, well, am I strong enough to get through the pain? Well, of course I am, because I chose it before I decided to incarnate. Right. So we can dig deep. It's the surface level stuff that keeps us in fear, I think.
Right. Absolutely. I agree, David. That was beautiful.
Let's see. Is this, I had a dark night after meeting. Oh, okay. So I think this is a question here. So she met her twin flame.
Also, this is interesting.
I had our meeting, so-called twin flame. Do the other person also experience any of this? What do you think, Yasmin?
The twin flame. Yikes. This is also a very controversial topic, I feel.
Is it your twin flame that started your first dark night?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Because you said it was a breakup, right? But it wasn't your twin?
Yeah, but he wasn't. No, he was my twin. I remember I was like in that rabbit hole, and I thought he was, but no, it was a false twin.
False twin. Okay.
It was a false twin. It was a toxic relationship. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it wasn't right. It wasn't the right relationship. Yeah, but it's interesting with the twin flame dynamic, because I've heard this from people that have actually experienced meeting their twin flame, and I haven't, so I don't know. I don't know how to answer that in terms of that specific topic with the twin flame. But based off of people that I know, friends and people that I have talked to about this, they have said the same, that their twin flame was the one that activated something. That person, that soul that came into their life activated something. I don't even know if it's right to label it twin flame or not, but that specific soul that you have a contract with is the one that activated something. So yeah, I think it's possible, because they could be showing you things about yourself that you need to heal, right? It could be past life stuff as well. I know that the idea of the twin flame is you've had many past lives together. You've experienced a lot together as well. So it could be that. Absolutely. I do think I've heard of it before. This is not new to me, like this statement is not new to me. So I've heard that this happens if you're on that journey. So
this is a question that I get quite a bit. I think she's asking, does my twin feel what I feel? And the answer to that is it's the same soul, but the problem is it's two different egos. So the twin flame theory is it's the same soul in two different physical avatars. But where
Right.
people get confused, well, if we have the same soul, they're going to feel what I feel. And if I heal, then they're going to heal. No,
Totally.
because they have a different ego. The ego is the barrier to the soul. The ego
Exactly.
is the device of individualism. We would
Right.
have no concept of being individuals if we didn't have an ego. That's
Absolutely.
because when we're
Absolutely.
non-physical, we're part of source consciousness,
Yeah.
and there's no ego. It's just all one consciousness.
Right.
But to
Totally.
fractalize in the physical, you take on an ego and you become an individual. So
Right.
even though this other person is the same soul, they have a different ego. So they're not going to feel when you heal. They're not going to
Absolutely.
feel,
Absolutely. Yeah.
uh,
That's a good way to put it, David. Actually, I haven't heard that. Because the twin flame concept is also a big a big rabbit hole, There's a lot in that. There's a lot of deception, there's a lot of things that do make sense, things that don't make sense.
well, the problem is there's a lot of channels that don't have a solid spiritual foundation. And they start espousing a bunch of stuff that keeps people obsessed over their twin instead of on their healing. And the whole point of the twin showing up is so that they heal and become their greatest version. It's not about a romantic
No,
thing.
it's not.
If you get
Exactly.
the romantic thing, then that's icing on the cake, but that's not the main
That's
reason.
not the goal. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. It is about you. The journey is about you.
it's 1,000% about you. Yeah,
It's just a label, on something that is about you.
1,000%. Is that a question? That's not a question. Any questions? Oh, you've got another interview, don't you? Are
Yeah,
we
soon at
oh,
3:30.
okay?
Yeah.
How much more time do you got? Five,
I
ten
got
minutes.
another 15 minutes.
Okay. Any questions for Yasmin, guys? I think I had one or two here. What is your best analogy to describe the dark night of the soul?
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Wow, that's something I got to think about. The best analogy to describe the dark night of the soul. I would say the dark night is. I remember I actually had one, and I remember journaling about it because I was like, this is so good. I'm like, like just free writing right now. And it was something along the lines of I can't remember it. I can't remember it. But it was like something along the lines of like going through being in like it's like being in a dark room, right? And the lights are off. And we can't find the light switch, right? And we're like we're trying to find the light switch. We're like freaking out because we're like, oh my God, where's the light? I know I've had that in moments where I'm like walking into a room and I don't know where the light switch is. And I'm like struggling to take my phone out and put the flashlight on. And then I eventually find the light switch, right? And then it's like this relief of like, oh, now I can do my things again. Now I can like find the things in my room and all that. It was something along the lines of that. I can't remember exactly what I
Wow.
had written.
So the light switch could be the new identity.
Yes,
And the
exactly.
flashlight on your phone can be the shadow work, the healing to get you
Yes.
over to the light switch, which is the new identity. And
Yes,
boom,
exactly,
we're out of
dude.
the dark.
It's so good. Exactly. And I remember I'm like, this is what it feels like, walking into a dark room, not finding the light switch. You're kind of like knocking things over, right? Because you're not seeing anything. And then eventually you find the light switch and you're like, oh, wait a second. It's all good. I can pick up the things again and put them back in their place, and that's
Absolutely.
what it feels like. It's that inner work. It's that idea of the inner work and like doing the things that you need to do, and getting back on track, in a new way, in a healthier, more integrated way.
More authentic way as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like to use the butterfly and the caterpillar analogy.
That one's good too.
Right?
Yeah.
That old identity is the caterpillar. When
Yeah.
you're in the darkness of the cocoon, you don't know the new identity. The new identity is still in the darkness. That's the cocoon.
Yeah.
Then you come
Yeah.
out into the butterfly. That's the healed version of yourself.
Yeah. I posted something on my story today about that, the butterfly and the caterpillar.
Oh,
Actually.
the universe confirms.
Yeah. So oh wait, I actually posted that earlier.
There you go. All right, guys. I don't see any more questions. I know she's got an interview, so I don't want to make her late.
Any
Any final thoughts on the dark night of the soul? Words of encouragement?
words of encouragement, guys? If you're going through it, keep going. There's no going, but if you're in the middle of the tunnel, you might as well just keep going. You will get to that point where you feel more integrated, you feel more grounded. Things will change. This is not forever. It is temporary. I think that's the biggest thing to remind yourself when you're in it, because it feels like you're there forever. It feels like that's it. This is it. This is my life. I'm never going to get out of it, and you start to, your ego gets really loud. I'm a failure. I'm this, I'm that, like all the things that I have felt on my journey. So if you're in it, just know it's temporary. You will get out of it. This is not a forever thing. And when you're out of it, you're going to realize why you're in it, and you're going to feel, trust me when I tell you guys, I feel so grateful now that I've come out of it. I feel so excited. I'm a brand new person. I feel exhilarated. You feel literally you're reborn. You feel like you're learning how to walk again. You feel like you're learning how to talk again. It's like a brand new identity. See it as a gift. See it as like, this is your new outfit, like wear it and shine brightly in it. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the things and the demons and the shadows that you might come across, like they're here. It's here to help you. And as long as you have that mindset, you will make it through.
And it's all a part of the process, right?
All part of the process. It's all part of and we can all agree that when we've gone through dark nights, it's very similar. The dark night for everyone has been very similar. There's a texture to it, that we can all agree with.
Yeah.
That it feels very heavy and dense. Yes. It might show up differently for everyone, again, depending on your personality and who you are and your experience and your trauma. But ultimately, there's a texture to it. And we can all agree that, it feels very similar.
Well, where can people find you, follow you, get in touch with you, all that good stuff?
Yes, all the stuff. Okay, guys, you could find me on my website, yasminelzomor.com. If you're looking to coach with me, or if you just want to chat, I'm open to that. Have like open, fun conversations about the dark night or anything. I'm friendly. I don't bite. I promise. You can DM me on Instagram as well. It's at Yasmin Elzomor. And my podcast, Humanity Feels, where I've had David on. We've talked a lot about the same things: dark night, transformation, spiritual bypassing, all the good stuff, all the things that need to be talked about. And if you guys are interested, like, please go listen. I have a lot of episodes on there. It's a very I would say it's a very like rabbit hole type of podcast where we explore different concepts and things that are not talked about in the mainstream. So
you expand people's consciousness.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is my goal. That is always my goal. At the end of the day, I am human. I don't know what's right or wrong either. As we all are human, we're all learning and growing. And I'm not here to tell you what to do or what not to do, but I am here to offer you different perspectives, So awesome. That's ultimately my goal. Yeah.
And I've got all of your links in the description, your website, podcast, and your IG. Are you on any other platforms? Facebook,
No.
TikTok, anything like that?
No, those are all the platforms.
Okay. Yeah. All right, guys. So you guys can find her stuff in my descriptions of this video. And Yasmin, it has been an awesome interview once again. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you, David. You're the best. Great talking to you, as always. Thank you guys for listening also, and the questions. Amazing.
All right, guys, that is the stream. Again, Yasmin, thank you. And everyone have an awesome high vibing day. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.